Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Helicopter Maintenance Help Desk. Welcome. Hey, this is the second video in a series of 3 videos. The main purpose of these 3 videos is the spacer tube inspection. Of course, the first video is removing the mast. Second video, which is this video, is inspecting the spacer tube. And if you need to disassemble the mast to replace the spacer tube, well, we're going to go through that. And then reassembling the mast. And then the next video, which is the third video in this series, it'll be on a playlist called, I don't know, spacer tube inspection, I guess. So I'll put these 3 videos. And the third video will be reinstalling the mast. All right. So this video right here, we're going to detailed inspection of the spacer tube. All right. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. I'm not affiliated with any aircraft manufacturers. I make these videos for entertainment, not education. Always refer to the manufacturer's maintenance instructions and not this video or any other videos on this channel. If there is something said in this video that is contrary to the maintenance manual, defer to the maintenance manual. Maintenance manuals are being revised all the time. Check current revisions prior to completing any maintenance on your aircraft. That being said, thank you for watching and let's roll. I'm going to say this again. I said it in the last video. Make sure you read the manual. There, we're going to go through about 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different sections of the maintenance manual. I'm not going to pull each one up, and I'm not going to read word for word on each part that we're going to go over. But I'm going to point out some things that you're going to need to look at, and I'm definitely going to go over almost line by line for the inspection and some things that people miss and my personal thoughts, stuff like that. Just read the manual, okay? Print it out. Just print it out. And the newest revisions of the manual so far on the left side are little squares. So if you, once you're done with that part that they tell you to do, hey, look at what? Look at dimension X or whatever measurement. Does it pass? Check it off so you know that you've done it, because this whole job to pull the mast out, do the inspection and put it back in is going to take a while, and you're going to have more than one guy working with you. So you want to make sure certain jobs get done and things don't get overlooked. All right. Okay, so if you have the mast out and the mast is sitting upside down, and if the spacer tube is still on the mast and you can't pull it out, pull the spacer tube off of the inner race of the bearing easily, that's because the inner race eventually rotates. It's kind of it's not a press fit, it's a temperature differential fit, right? So when you put it together, you heat up the bearing and you push it down onto the mast, and then when it cools, it's stuck on there pretty good, pretty tight. So it shouldn't rotate in theory, but in practice, it eventually over time spins on the mast, and it puts pressure on the teeth of the spacer tube, and then the lower part of the spacer tube has splines, so it's attached to the mast. You understand? So it's not supposed to move. So that's part of the inspection, is to look at the wear of the teeth on the top of the spacer tube. So if you can't pull it out, that means it's under pressure.
Under pressure. Under pressure.
And that means you're going to have to wiggle around and give it a couple taps with a little rubber mallet.
Give it a little tappy. Tap, tap, taparoo.
Couple taps with a little rubber mallet to get it loose. And if you have to do that, it's not going to go back on. It doesn't matter. It's not going to go back. You're not going to pound it back on. It'll wreck the teeth even more. So you will at that time have to disassemble the mast, and we're going to go through that. Okay, so that being said, let's just start this inspection. I know we're probably like 5 minutes in of me blah blahing you to death. So what do they want you to do? They want you to clean the mast. Use the cleaner they call out. Okay, clean it. Examine the spacer tube for cracks. Obviously, if you find cracks, you need to get a new one. It says examine the teeth for mechanical damage or missing teeth. If you find mechanical damage in one or more teeth, replace the tube. Yeah, well, we're looking for wear, so they're not calling the wear mechanical damage, which is strange. I guess it's a translation error. But then it says it has a huge caution, and it's all bold. It says if one or more teeth are missing, do the following steps. It says if a tooth is broken off, I've never seen that. You need to make sure you find it inside the transmission, which is sucky. says risk of damage to the transmission if one or more. It says one or more missing teeth can cause damage to the transmission. If you do not remove the teeth, you can damage the transmission. It says make sure that you remove the missing teeth or contact your local tech rep if you cannot remove the missing teeth from the transmission. Like I said, I've never seen a tooth broken off, and I've probably done a dozen of these, which is, I guess, a decent amount, but it's not like I'm doing this every day. So, you know what I'm saying? All right, next. It says do an inspection of the teeth on the end face of the spacer tube for wear as follows. This is dimension X. Measure the width, dimension X, which is the teeth, the tooth. To figure out which one has the most wear, that will be the smallest tooth. Check all of them. Like, don't do an average, just check the smallest one. And then it says if the width of the smallest tooth is less than 4.49 millimeters, you need to replace the spacer tube. Well, it depends. Hold on. Go to the chart. The chart says it depends on which Mast nut or hub shaft nut you have. We have the new style, which is variant 1. The new style has the thrust bolts, and that's what I'm pretty sure all of our machines have. And if you are operating a transmission that has the new style Mast nut, it allows you more time between spacer tube inspections. The interval for a brand new spacer tube is 2,000 flight hours. If you have the old style Mast nut, it's 1,600 hours. So anyway, you go to this chart, or you go to the table, and if you have anything that is 4.5 millimeters or larger, you're allowed to reuse the spacer tube as long as all the other inspections that we're going to go over here, if they all pass, then you could reuse it. The next inspection interval, the smallest one, is 5,000 5,000. Yeah, right. 500 flight hours. So if it's worn out and it's 4.50 millimeters, put it back in, dude. These things are expensive. They're like unobtainium expensive, man. We'll go over that later. All right, cool. So if that passes or fails, if it fails, you're done with the inspection. Get a new one. All right, next. On my maintenance manual I'm reading over right now, it's F5. Do an inspection of the mating surfaces on the end faces of the spacer tube for wear as follows. This is dimension Y. It's just the length of it. It says if Y is less than 214.75 millimeters, which is 8.455 inches, replace the spacer tube. So you're going to check it between all 5 of the teeth for the smallest number. And if you get anything that is below 214.75 millimeters, then you're going to need to replace the spacer tube. And in my experience, if you have the new style Mast nut, then your spacer tube will fail this dimension. I don't want to say almost every time. Every one I've done recently failed this check. The teeth will have wear on them, but they won't be as worn out as the old style Mast nut or hub shaft nut. So let me just say that one more time in a different way. Before, with the old style Mast nuts, we would fail, the teeth would be worn out and it would fail the spacer tube check, and we wouldn't even check dimension Y. That might have also failed. So I don't know if it's a new problem. Anyway, that being said, let's just move forward. Next, we're on step 6. Examine the ring and the spacer tube for correct installation. If the ring is incorrectly installed, that means it's loose now. Contact your local Airbus representative. I think before it said it was trash. Either that or the people I talked to at Airbus says you cannot rebond that seal onto there. But I think maybe you can now. But like I said, pretty much everyone that I have checked in the last 2 years has failed the Y dimension. And half of them also had the seal messed up, but we're not going to glue the seal back on because the spacer tube's already trashed because it failed the other check. That makes sense. Wow, that was easy. That's the end. Not really, not the end of this video, just the end of the inspection. Next step, close up, install the spacer tube, go to the installation section. All right, great. So if your spacer tube passes, you can just hand jam that back onto there of course, make it fit. It won't line up. You have to try all 5. You got to keep rotating it to make sure that the spline lines up and the teeth line up. And then you go to go install it. So it could be easy, but most of them I've seen have failed because it's been flying for 2,000 hours. That's a long time, right? Okay, so next thing we're going to go over is partially disassembling the mast so that we can install a new spacer tube and the kind of problems that you might run into doing this job. And like I said before, if the spacer tube will not just freely come off of the mast, and you have to give it a couple taps, it's not going to go back on. You're going to have to pull the bearing, which is the bearing and the bearing inner race are connected. So that's one piece. And right above that, well, if it's upside down, it's below that. But on the aircraft right above that is the ring, which is the ring that the upper mast seal seals against. So anyway, you're going to pull off the ring and the bearing together, and then you're going to put them all back on together. You're going to put the ring on together. You're going to put the ring on, and then you're going to put the spacer tube, the new spacer tube, with your bearing on to the mast at the same time so that the splines line up and the teeth line up with the inner ring. I know that's a lot of words, but we're going to go over that step by step. Okay, in this picture, the mast is right side up. You would have it on the ground, upside down. But I'm just using this picture to look at. Do you see above the ring is a ridge? The mast is a little bit wider there, and so it has like a ledge or an edge. So when the ring goes onto the mast, it butts up against it. So it can only go in one spot, and it has to go all the way against it. So before you do anything, clean that up real good, and then maybe mark a circle with a marker on there. Maybe a couple lines or whatever, a couple spots, so that when you go back together with it, you know it's all the way down. You don't have to do that, because if you do this job correctly, it will be good. But if you're off by, like, just say a couple millimeters, and you go all the way back to put this back in the helicopter, and you check your final measurement, and it's off, and then you got to do all this again, you're going to be pissed. So anyway, and I'll show you how you can get this screwed up down the road on the assembly part. But mark a line all the way around it, or mark a couple marks there so you know that that ring is all the way seated against that ridge on the mast. Okay, let's pull this mast apart. So you're going to need this tool right here on the bottom right. I don't know what it's called, but it's in the manual. All this is in the manual. You're going to need this part, which is the puller, and it has the big arms. Got a clamps against your ring. You're going to need that. You're going to need this little hydraulic press, and then also the hydraulic pump. And what else? Okay, that's it. Okay, here's what I was talking about the ridge. So number 1 is the mast. Number 2 is the ring, and you see that it's a wider piece of the mast that butts up against the ring. Okay, number 5 is the inner race of the bearing. Number 6 and 7 is your spacer tube. All right. Okay, now we're at a good place right here. It's upside down, just like you're looking at it. Everything here is brand new, because I just took the pictures of the new one, not the old one. Because I never take enough pictures. It just seems to be that way. That's why this video has taken me a very long time to make. Honestly, it's taken like a year. I've done like this job like 3 times to get enough videos to make this or enough pictures to make this video. Anyway, cry me a river, right? So right here, the swash plate support that has the upper mast seal inside of it. If you needed to do that job, that's where it is. So you would do this disassembly here, just pull and then you would pull that swash plate support out and change that seal. And here's a side note: when you do it and you use the tool, since that seal is so wide, it almost never goes in straight. So you have to, before you take it out, check to see how deep it is all the way around. And when you go back in, just make sure it's level. Because if you just press it in and you don't double check to make sure it's equal all the way around, it's not going to seal jack, and it's going to leak oil all day long, and you're going to do all of this again. And I've been that guy where we've done this job 3 times way back in the beginning until we finally realized it's pretty much you got to move that seal around with your freaking meat hooks. your fingers, right? You're going to have to freaking move it around and get it in the right spot. Anyway, that's a side note tangent. Okay, we're pulling this thing apart now. We got that big old thing with the long arms and the clamp. We're going to clamp it underneath the ring. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Back up. The swash plate support, you have to push it down a little bit so you have enough room for the clamp piece with the arms and clamp underneath the ring. Because you can't just pull the bearing off. You'll wreck it. Look at it. It's made out of brass. And also look at it and see if it's all bent up, because I've seen that also. So, push the swash plate support down a little bit if you can. Don't get crazy, because it's gonna hit the bottom of where the drive links connect. It will contact there. So don't jam it down there. Just nice and easy. Make sure you have enough room. There's not much room. Put this tool on there. So put the tool on there. Make sure it's grabbing under the ring. And make sure all those bearings are pushed in, because sometimes they pop out a little bit. Cool. Now we hook up that one round piece on the top, or cylindrical piece. It fits into the inside of the mast. It just slides in, and then it actually threads into that red hydraulic ram piece. You have it all assembled. Now you start pumping it up. I'm going to see what the manual says, if there's a maximum. No, there's no warnings in the manual about how much to pump it up. They actually talk about using a different style, which is just like, it's like a big bolt inside of a hollow, I don't know, ram, and it's just filled with oil. So it's an old school hydraulic type pump. It's not like this one. But there is a note saying that there's an old tool, like the clampy piece. It's an old style, and the new style, anyway, it has warnings. It has pictures. Read them. Go to the manual and read it. Where are we now? We are at AMM, Aircraft Maintenance Manual 62310004-5. Okay, there is a note. I said this in my last video. Don't touch any of this stuff with your bare hands, okay? Wear gloves. And it says that right here, to avoid corrosion. I'm not going to beat that horse to death. I think we all get that, right? I have seen guys pumping this thing up, and it's crazy pressure. Crazy pressure. I don't know, man. Let's just say I don't know. I'm not even going to say a number. Just tons of pressure. And it won't come off. It won't pull it off. What do? Well, you have a couple options. First, take all the pressure off. Undo the... I got to figure out what it's called before I keep calling it clampy piece. It's called pulling clamp. Okay, so remove the pulling clamp off. I mean, like loosen it up, all the pressure off, and then rotate it. Like maybe take the arms off, turn it 180 or turn it 90 degrees, clamp it back up again, and then try pumping it again. And then I've heard guys doing that, and then it came off like it's supposed to with, I don't want to say minimal pressure, but way less pressure than they were at. If that still doesn't work, you could probably heat it up. But if you do that, you're also heating the mast up because it's touching it. So I don't know. That's going to be a tough one. But I've only heard of that a couple times. Okay, back to this. Back to the maintenance manual. Just pump it up, then it comes off. The ring with the bearing come off at the same time. I mean, it's up past it's a wider area. You see where the gray spot is right there? It's wider than where the shiny spot is. So once it goes past the gray part, the whole thing's loose. So make sure that someone's there next to the whole contraption so it doesn't like fall over. But then you could undo it, and you can undo the clamping fixture, pulling clamp, whatever it's called, and then take off the bearing and the ring. Cool. Done. What do we do next? Well, for this particular job, bad news for us. The inside of the inner race of the bearing had pitting and corrosion. So that's bad. Also, the ring had pitting and corrosion, and the silver plating or whatever it's called, I think it's called silver plating, was all, like most of it was flaked off. It came off, when we pulled it off, it was all just a bunch of flakes. It was wild. Anyway, Looking at the inspection, which I'm not looking at right now, but if my memory serves me correctly, the fact that the silver plating was gone from the inside of that ring, it meant you needed a new one. But also there was pitting and corrosion, and Airbus says no, you need a new one. No worries. So if you need a new bearing, a new mast bearing, like I said, the inner race and the bearing are attached, but that part right there comes, it's a matched set with the outer race. So when you get it, it comes together. Don't leave the old race in the top of the transmission. You need to take that race out and replace it, okay? It's kind of tricky to do, but go to that chapter in the manual on how to replace that and do it right, okay? Here's a quick video of it getting removed, and then a quick video of, I think that was me trying to put it back in, and it took a long time, and we followed the manual. We heated up the transmission to a ton, whatever it says, and it has to go precisely in. Like, you can't, if it gets cocked sideways at all, then it gets stuck. Crazy. Anyway. Okay. Great. That's it for the removal, because that's as far as we're going to disassemble this mast, because we're not going to take off the swash plate, and we don't need to take off the support tube. Okay, next, we're going to go back. We're going to go to the buildup of this job. All right, you're going to want to clean it real good. How do they tell you to clean it? What's it say? Doesn't really say. Clean the main rotor hub shaft and renew the layer of varnish on the fane surfaces for the ring and the inner race of the roller bearings. Also, the outer splines at the very bottom of the mast. It gives you a reference, 6231008-4. So go there. Okay. All right. What do they want you to do? Or what do you need to do that job? In the manual, they tell you to use consumable CM516. If you click on it, it's blank. So you have to go all the way to the list of consumable materials, which is right here. So it's MTC. That's the section MTC 2001010102. Scroll all the way down to find what it is, because that's where the replacement reference now is. Anyway, it says it's replaced by CM152. What is CM152? It is DuPont Molykote 3402 CLF right here. Great. Read the manual. They want you to spray it on. So clean it real good. You got to clean all the old stuff off. Spray it on. It can only be a certain thickness. Anyway, just make sure it looks good. Do a good job. All right, now we're going to assemble this thing. What tools do you need? First thing, you're going to need this long tube. It's a drift. Then you're going to need to heat up. Oh, let me just read the damn manual. All right. It tells you again, there's a note. It says the inner race of the roller bearing and the outer race of the roller bearing belong together as a bearing pair. If you need to replace them together. And it says AMM 6321008-8. If the roller bearing is not is replaced, ensure that the roller bearing and spacer tube fit together. See note step 10 regarding pairing for parts. All right, here's a note. The heat that you apply to the spacer tube is only necessary when it does not fit to the main rotor hub shaft. So it says apply heat to the ring, inner race of the roller bearing, and to the spacer tube. We just said not necessarily the spacer tube, to a temperature of a ton. Okay, 110 degrees Celsius to 130 degrees Celsius. That's 230 degrees Fahrenheit to 266 degrees. That's hot. That's hot. So what did we use here? We used an old microwave that the hospital was throwing out. Apparently, this microwave was only to be used to sterilize breast pumps, so that's great. Okay, so that's heating up with the heat gun. I don't know, make sure you don't heat it to 500 degrees. Just make sure it's within the range. Don't overheat that stuff, but also make sure it's hot enough. Get some welding gloves or some really thick gloves, or you're going to burn your hands. For real. Okay, note, this is important. And since their notes are green, I think in your brain, you just don't want to read them. Like, I understand that. Not you, but the general you, meaning me, right? So note, when installing the ring, ensure not to hit the drift with a hammer in order to bring it fully butt against the shoulder of the rotor hub shaft, since otherwise the ring may rebound, blah, 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 blah. What that means is don't hit it. Don't hit the drift with a hammer to make it fit. All you do is you press it down and you hold it there until it cools and shrinks, and then it clamps up against it because it shrinks against it. Okay? If you tap it down, you might tap it and it might bounce off the shoulder while it's cooling, and when it bounces up, it might cool enough where it's whatever, half an inch, a couple millimeters not against the shoulder, but since it's cooled enough, it's stuck there now and it won't move, but you think it's all the way down. So don't hit it with a hammer. In this video I'm going to show you, we did that. Of course, it didn't go all the way down, and we took it off and it went down correctly. So that's an important note. Otherwise, you're gonna figure it out later. Everything won't work. So just grab the ring with your gloves. Make sure it's on the correct direction, but it should just drop down. If it's hot enough, it'll just drop all the way down to the shoulder. Then you have another guy come in with the drift and just hold it down for, I don't know, just a little while. Then it cools. The heat will transfer to the mast. The ring will shrink and grab it. It will shrink up onto it, okay?
When I start pulling that heat on you, you might want to drop her down.
Yeah, right there's where it gets tight. So now he could just press it with the thing. Now hold it down. Just push your weight on it and let it cool. So he went down pretty slow with that thing, and it cooled too fast. But it still went all the way down. Okay, no worries. Okay, now we're going to do the bearing and the spacer tube at the same time. There's also a note here, the same note we said, don't hit it with a hammer because it will cool down, it will bounce off the ring, and it won't be up against it flush like it's supposed to. So you have a guy grab the bearing, you have another guy grab the spacer tube, and you line up the teeth of the spacer tube to the slots on the inside race of the bearing. And you hold them together and you put it down together at the same time until you get to the point where the splines in the mast line up with the spline. You might have to rotate that spacer tube and bearing assembly together until the splines line up, and then you can go down all the way, and then either that guy or another guy comes in with a smaller drift and just presses down on it to hold it there, just to hold it until it cools, just like the ring. So that sounds good in theory, so we're going to show how it goes.
Yep. Go ahead and go. Push. Slow up.
They go too slow, or the bearing's not hot enough, or both, and it cools down and it doesn't go all the way down. If you go pretty much most of the way, you have to pull that ring and bearing off again as an assembly. It didn't go down, they pulled it off, and they try again.
Tangs. Let's go. I'll push you. Go. Fingers.
Just hold it
there, bro.
Yeah, you're in.
Just hold her there. Went like butter, see? And if you see how your spacer tube's not centered, that's actually a good thing, because it'll hold that spacer tube on there. If that spacer tube's centered, it wants to slide off when you're up there. So having it off, see how it's to one side, isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Okay, did you see how the bearing, like, it just dropped down? Perfect. It just dropped down, and it wasn't even, like, the guy who was holding the spacer tube wasn't keeping up with him, but it dropped down, and then once the spacer tube splines lined up with the mast, he caught up with it, and it went right in the right spot. Perfect. So that's good. And then you just hold pressure with the drift until it cools so it doesn't move. Strong work, guys. Awesome, dude. That's it. That's the job. The job's done. So you want to double check to see that the ring lines up with the lines that you originally marked, just to make sure it's all the way down. That's a side note. Honestly, that's it. And make sure that seal is good, and make sure that spring inside of that seal didn't pop out. But that's on the next video. We're going to do the reinstallation of the mast. But that's it for this video. So pretty much the highlights are, if you're going to do the spacer tube inspection, you should plan to have a spacer tube on hand. if you can. I mean, how much is a spacer tube? I don't know. I think I have it written down. Let me look. Yeah, duh. I have it written right here on a Post-it note on my laptop that's been here for like a year because I've been waiting to make this freaking video. It was $12,489.74. So let's do the math on that. Hold on a sec. Okay, so just the spacer tube, if it fails after 2,000 hours, which I'm pretty sure they all will, that will cost you $6.25 a flight hour, not including shipping and not including maintenance costs. That's a lot. $6.25 a flight hour that you're going to guarantee have to pay when you operate this helicopter for this part. Just saying. That's why helicopters are expensive. This is one of like 1,000 parts that you're going to replace. Blah, blah, blah. I'm blah, blah, blah. You to death. So if you're going to do this job, if you can, have an extra spacer tube on hand because it's probably going to fail. What else? You're going to have to do a retorque in 150 hours and 1,000 hours. What else? Don't touch anything with your bare hands. Anyway, guys, I hope you found value in this video. I hope you learned something. I hope this helps. Questions, comments, write them in the comments section. My email's on here too. Send me an email. Most of you guys know me. Willing to answer the phone most of the time, so I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you know of anybody who might be interested in a refresher or a learning experience because they're about to do this job, send them to this channel or send them to this video or send the link to this video, whatever you got to do. All right, guys, thanks for tuning into the channel. Appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next time. Later.